Do you think they would use a bioweapon and create another global pandemic?
That's coming from China. That's a weapon. And it's a weapon to hurt Americans.
I think the standing Taiwanese army is like 150,000, largely worthless.
Well, you asked how could it go down, or when would it go down?
If China's going to go for this, they have to make it quick. They have to own Taiwan in a matter of days or weeks. I think the standing Taiwanese army is like 150,000, largely worthless, very soft, very woke, and any significant weapon system they have has already been targeted by probably a dozen, or pre-registered by a dozen Chinese precision weapons, because it's only, 70, 80 miles from the mainland to Taiwan. But what they can't account for is 720,000, right? 3% of 24 million that show up, that step outside their house and say, get off my yard. And if they're equipped, if they have access to small arms, EFPs, a very potent roadside bomb,
Emergency comms.
drones, fiber optic drones, which can't be jammed, RPGs, and the innovation and the basic skill sets to make every street corner, every intersection, every neighborhood another fortified urban hellhole for the PLA to have to push through, or even if the first wave comes through and now they're getting lit up from behind, that is not something the PLA can plan for. Because if China's going to go for this, they have to make it quick. They have to own Taiwan in a matter of days or weeks. They cannot accept the blockade or the embargoes that would happen and the videos of Taiwanese people being slaughtered by this terrible occupation that inevitably would happen.
Do you think they would use a bioweapon and create another global pandemic?
Possible. I could see some kind of other financial massive shorting of the financial system with the debt crisis. We're kind of doing that to ourselves now by adding more and more trillions of debt. If they can cause that level of financial pain and chaos, what's not going to happen is, if it is to be, it's up to we. It's going to be the U.S. government. It's because the Australians are not going to do much. Maybe Japan, probably not Korea.
Right.
Because Koreans and Japanese they hate each other. As much as Korea should be involved in that fight because they're either join or get squeezed off on their own. NATO, Britain, France, totally useless, which is why it is so important. It is in the interest of the United States government to end the debacle that is Ukraine and pull Russia away from the orbit of China. Because right now, I talked to one head of state that had been at every BRICS meeting, every BRICS summit. And the previous ones were always very equal footing between Xi and Putin. The last one, Xi was definitely ascendant. And for 100 plus years, it was the policy of the United States to keep German industry from combining with Russian natural resources. Now, all we've done, all this stupid Ukraine war has done is push Russia, all those Russian resources, into a subservient role to the Chinese Communist Party and their massive, massive industry. That is not in our strategic interest. We do not want to tangle. If China is going to go for it, we don't want Russia on the side of China in any way, shape, or form. That we cannot handle.
Well, you asked how could it go down, or when would it go down? These are, I guess, two different questions. The latter question, I don't know. Nobody knows. It can happen next week. It could happen 5 years from now, but it's going to happen at some point. How it happens? I suspect that a full-on invasion would be very difficult. If you go back to World War II, we had something called Operation Causeway, which was an invasion of Taiwan. And our military leaders said, you know what, this is way too hard. So let's go to the Philippines instead. Taiwan is a hard nut to crack. Could it happen with a combination of cyber influence operations? Eric mentioned very briefly, United Front and Thousand Talents. You may want to explain what those are, but these are basically spies.
Massive spy network infrastructure all through American companies, infrastructure, all the rest. The ability to really cause mayhem in the United States at the behest of Beijing.
But the Thousand Talents and United Front work doesn't just leave the United States. You also have United Front spies in Taiwan. What I'm seeing is that these exercises are they're slowly tightening the noose to the point where it's becoming demoralizing for the Taiwanese. And what I would hate is for them to see this, to resign themselves to say, well, to the inevitability of it, right? It's inevitable anyway. We may as well just give up. And so they become despondent. And I 100% agree with taking 3% of the Taiwanese population, arming them to the gills, and creating a real insurgency that gives China pause. But what if everything were an artifact of war? In other words,
everything is weaponized.
Smuggling fentanyl in the United States, where 90% of the precursors of fentanyl obviously come from China. Mm-hmm. By the way, happy Memorial Day. I did some math, and in the Pacific Theater alone, 110,000 soldiers died in World War II. Plus add another 60 for Vietnam, another 40 for the Korean War, and another roughly 7 to 10 from random things that happen in the Pacific, the Philippines, and so forth. It's about let's call it 200 plus thousand deaths. In fentanyl, over the last 4 years, we've had something like 70,000 people die of fentanyl every single year. Mm-hmm. Many of them are veterans.
Much bigger numbers than that.
I think it's over 100,000 a year.
Let's assume it's 100,000 a year. That's 400,000 over the last 4 years. And a lot of them are veterans. And guess what? That's coming from China. Mm-hmm. That's a weapon. And it's a weapon to hurt Americans.
It's an intentionally funded, organized, facilitated by the Chinese Communist Party, Chinese nationals in Mexico teaching the cartels how to cook fentanyl. And it's a payback for the opium wars of 150 years ago, which the U.S. was not even really part of. That was the Brits. But they see it as a way to corrode our society. I think it's very important to remember we fought a war against China. When? 1952, 53. Mm-hmm. When 1 million Chinese volunteers came rolling across the Yalu River and attacked the U.S. forces in Korea. MacArthur wanted to bomb them properly, and he was relieved. And we basically fought for 2 more years to a stalemate, again, ending up on the 38th parallel. But we fought a very hot war against China. We haven't fought one against the Soviet Union. And their ability to project tens, hundreds of thousands of people.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.